are the effects of the strongest landfalling cyclone recorded in world history. Super Typhoon Haiyan is a beast of a storm and is ripping through the Philippines. It was packing sustained winds of 195 miles an hour at one point. Straight ahead expert analysis of what's happening now and next with this historic storm. Live from the Weather Channel headquarters in Atlanta, Weather Center Live starts now. Kyla Grogan here with you for Weather Center Live. So it's one of the most intense tropical cyclones we've ever seen. And right now, Super Typhoon Haiyan is doing a number on the Philippines. We're going to go in depth on the typhoon with Chris Warren and storm specialist Carl Parker.
Thank you, Kyla. And Carl, this is an absolutely massive storm affecting millions of people. So let's try to put this into perspective for people living here in the United States who are familiar with hurricanes in the Atlantic. How would you compare this to past Atlantic storms?
Well, when you think about some of the strongest storms that we have seen in the Atlantic in recent years, and one year really comes to mind, 2005, when we had Katrina and Rita and Wilma, incredibly strong storms. And this storm was stronger than all of those storms at their peak. But all of those storms peaked, and then as they moved north, they weakened. And that's pretty typical when storms come up from the Gulf of Mexico and into the southeast. They start to take on continental air, or there's some shear that gets involved, and then they tend to be a little bit weaker.
How does this compare to Andrew?
Well, it's a lot stronger than Andrew.
A
lot stronger than Andrew, yes, because Andrew was a very strong storm, and the winds were up to about 165 miles per hour, but the winds in this storm were up to 195 at its peak. That's just completely off the charts, and we use a particular type of measurement called Dvorak, which is an automated thing that looks at the shape of the clouds and the coldness of the clouds, and on the Dvorak chart, it was off the charts. I mean, just like nothing we ever see, basically. So this was an unbelievably strong storm and continues to be, now at least mercifully moving along, but causing catastrophic damage where it goes, especially right near that core. Notice the cloud temperatures have warmed a little bit. We're not seeing as much of the purple, so there's been a slight weakening, but still a 185 mile per hour storm.
And cloud temperatures are important because that corresponds with higher clouds, colder clouds, and higher clouds also means stronger storm.
Stronger storm, exactly right. And, this storm has also had a very tight gradient, which is to say the very strong winds have been right around that core, and that came right through Tacublan earlier and Guinan earlier. In Cebu, the winds have been coming out of the south at 47 miles per hour. So when you get outside of that core, the wind drops off pretty quickly. But right in that core, I would imagine that all along that path, the devastation is going to be just unbelievable. And as we've talked about, there's a lot of housing in the Philippines that is not very good. That's, just shoddily put together. And so I think there's going to be tremendous devastation as a result.
And this is why it is just so important to find a shelter.
Yes, it's hugely important. And, I think that process has been improving in these countries where, they're not quite as wealthy as, a lot of the countries in the West. I think that has been improving because a lot more people have cell phones, for one thing, so the communication is better. Now, here's a look at the GFS model forecast, and we're looking at the strength of the wind, and you see that's still very strong here across much of the central Philippines. This is looking at 11 o'clock our time. Again, the storm is moving along. That's good in terms of the rainfall, though there is going to be very heavy rainfall. It's the slow-moving storms that produce the heaviest of rainfall. And then here we go into 5 a.m. We're still seeing very strong wind in the western part of the central Philippines, but notice that it's getting much better, as indicated by those blues, in the eastern part of the Philippines. So at least, it will be improving.
Now, what about storm surge? How long is it going to take for storm surge to let up?
Well, it's a pretty quick thing. It comes in with the leading edge of the wind when it's pointed at the coast, and then as soon as it goes by and the wind switches around, then it'll go back out again. But we have heard unofficially some reports of storm surge getting up to around 30 feet, and that would not be at all surprising given the intensity of the storm. And that type of storm surge is absolutely devastating at this point.
All right, Carl, thank you for that. Let's go right now and get an update with Sonia Cook, the Ministry Director for Save the Children. She's joining us live via Skype. Sonia, we appreciate you joining us once again. Tell us about the mission of Save the Children and what is being done right now, what has been done out ahead of the storm.
Well, Save the Children respond to natural disasters and conflicts worldwide, so we have positioned a response team in Tacloban. They're taking shelter right now as the storm passes overhead, but pretty soon they're going to be out distributing relief supplies, evaluating the situation, assessing what people need, and, based on our experience, they're going to need health care, they're going to need materials to fix their homes. As you mentioned, the shelters in this part of the Philippines can be really flimsy. They're called nipa huts, just made out of bamboo and palm leaves. And we can expect that a lot of those villages are just going to be flattened. And so a lot of work is going to be needed to get people back on their feet and recover from the storm.
And, certainly they have a lot of experience with typhoons in this part of the world. Do you think that there may be some cases where people are not as inclined to go to shelters because they have so much experience with typhoons, even though this is a very different storm relative to most of them?
Yeah, that does happen a lot. People sort of feel overconfident and they don't take the necessary precautions. I mean, the word went out that we saw this storm coming a few days ago, but there will always be pockets of people that don't listen. And the Philippines is made up of 7,000 islands. So just the logistics of getting people aware and into shelters can be challenging. It's going to make the response that much harder because we're going to have to go from island to island looking for people who were affected and getting them the relief they need.
Sonia Cush, Emergency Director for Save the Children, thank you very much for that update, and best of luck to you in the days to come, because as she's mentioning, more than 7,000 islands. This is a huge task in the aftermath.
This is going to go on for a very, very long time. And, last year they were hit by Typhoon Bofa, and it was terrible. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced as a result of that storm.
All right, thanks, Carl. Here's Kyla.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Well, Super Typhoon Haiyan is equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. And, when you hear us say Cat 1 or Cat 5, it's important to know what each category means and the damage each one can do. Meteorologist Mark Elliott breaks it down.
When it comes to hurricanes, each one's impacts are a little bit different, but the wind speeds that we talk about along the Saffir-Simpson scale, those are very specific, and the damage caused in those categories, kind of predictable. So let me show you. Let's start off with a Category 1 storm. And the damage here, not too bad. A couple of shingles fall off, you can have some palm fronds bending in the wind, but everything basically remains intact. Category 2, that's where you really start to feel it. Look at the windows of the house. They can be hit from debris from the outside and already start breaking in a Category 2. Your trees are significantly bent over in the wind, and the siding of the house itself can break, flapping there in the wind, adding to those eerie noises inside. Category 3. I've heard only a Category 3, but it's not only anything except really bad news. In a Category 3, you can have the door of the house blown in because the winds get so strong. You can have the roof of the house start to flap up and down in the wind because it's going to lift off those weak points, and a lot of those trees start to fall. Category 4, the damage is even worse. You get most trees falling, and most of your windows breaking, and most of your shingles fly away, and then Cat 5 is as high as the category scale goes. By Cat 5, no shingles remain anywhere nearby. The holes in the roof get so big that the walls of the house start to fall because they're not attached to anything anymore. There won't be any trees up in the neighborhood. That's just catastrophic damage. But again, that's just from the wind, and there are other impacts from hurricanes, and they all vary through the season. So stick with the Weather Channel to keep you safe as the tropics head towards your neck of the woods.
Mark, thank you. Coming up, the cold air that's coming to the east could be the beginning of a snow event for the Northeast next week.
And straight ahead.